want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We are the Mad Men of Masculinity.
Your home for healthy masculinity. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Good day, Mad Men Mafia.
I am Kirk M. Samuels.
And I am Jason B. Kendrick.
And we are the Mad Men of Masculinity, baby.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Talk about spicy, man. You know, it's time to break out the hot sauce today. It's time to break out the hot sauce. I mean, if you're watching us online, you see the title. If you're not watching us online, man, we you know, the song came out in the 90s, Salt and Pepper. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. They say it, not me.
To speak.
Yeah. But we're gonna talk about sex today, man. Not between the two of us, because we don't roll like that, you know.
No, and just before you guys tune off, because you're like, we don't want to hear these two weirdos talking about sex. We know people. We talk to people.
We know
there's other folks around, so we make
Absolutely.
sure we brought in an expert because we know y'all don't want to hear us talk about it. Y'all want to hear us and our war stories and our silliness, so we made sure we brought in an expert.
Although I got some great stories, you know. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, 52 years, I got some great stories, but we ain't gonna go there. I was at Gary Barnes boot camp, and I met this young lady, man. I mean, and she just kind of had a flow about her, and I was like, we got to have you on the radio. We got to have you on to talk about this thing. And so, without further ado, reintroducing to some, presenting to others, the one and only Miss Beth Mongold. How are you, young lady?
I love that you're calling me a young lady.
Of course. Younger than me.
Made my day.
No doubt. I mean, it is what it is. And I told you this, and I clarified it when I told you that it's an observation, but your presence, your I don't know, your demeanor, your vibe, your aura, your whatever it is, you just have a sultry kind of thing about you. And it's great that you are a sex and intimacy, because now that's not me being weird or creepy. I'm happily married and all those kinds of good things. But at the same time, I'm observant in the same way I tell Jason that he has a weird vibe about him. I can tell you that, you know, even when you spoke and all that kind of stuff, you just kind of bring that with you. And so anyhow,
and there you go.
We had to have you on to talk about this thing. I mean, especially from somebody that
might actually know something.
Oh, no. Well, thank you, Kirk. I really appreciate it. I'm very flattered. And actually, I think that takes a lot of courage when a man can, like, genuinely and authentically, you know, admire a woman. I admire that capacity, because a lot of men these days feel really afraid to do that. And I think Jason, you're nodding.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely one of the reasons, you know, we want to have you on and have the experts on to talk about these things is because there's such a just lack of healthy communication. There's a lack of awareness. There's just and even a lack of quote unquote safety to talk about these topics, especially nowadays. You know, we see such a kind of double-edged sword coming from the feminist narrative in a lot of ways of, you know, I'm a boss babe and I'm equal to you. Why aren't guys approaching me anymore? Oh, we all forgot about the Me Too movement and all these other cancel culture things. And it's like, how can we have these conversations in a safe environment without, you know, the women feeling creeped out and the men feeling like they're going to get canceled or something?
Yeah. It's a challenging thing. The cultural narratives we've had around sex are really limiting. And people are suffering because of it. You know, I work with men, I work with women, I work with couples, and almost everyone who comes to me is like, I need a place where it's safe to talk about these things. I've never talked about it before. My family didn't talk about it. I've tried to talk about it and things have blown up in my face. And it's, you know, it's so funny because, like, one of the things I always say, it's like, sex is how we all got here. It's the
hope
reason
so.
we all exist.
Absolutely. We actually kicked around some topics to talk about here today, and I, me being the old geezer on the front porch, I kind of pulled us back a little bit from some of the topics that we had that we were kicking around, only because I realized that this is probably the first time that we've even just talked about sex, for at least from our radio era. And so I was thinking, man, if we jump into the deep end, that could actually backfire a little bit. So I was like, man, maybe we just talk about, just the idea of talking about sex. It's one of the things that, to your point, that's how we all got here. And, we're heavily wired as sexual beings. So the idea of us talking about sex shouldn't be weird. It shouldn't be foreign especially with just everything in our culture today. We talk about everything else. Let's not have why not have a healthy dialogue around sex?
Yeah. Everyone who comes to me says, we just didn't talk about it growing up. And so, if you think about like all the things that we love about life, whether it's like food or sports or anything like that's worth doing, can you imagine being expected to be good at it without ever having had any education or talking about it at all? But that's how we are about sex. And like, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and at the same time, again, it's such a driver in our culture. We live in such a culture that's just, it's part of, it's like a fish in the fish tank. You ask the fish, how's the water? And the fish says, what water? Because it's just around us. We're just in it. And so the idea of having a dialogue, regardless of your background, some people have, more, I'm going to say conservative perspectives on sex. Some people are just, woohoo, go for it, get yours, body count, all that kind of stuff. And, whatever people's take on it is, either way, it's like, we're surrounded by this thing in our culture. And again, it shouldn't be weird, because that's how, that's one of the ways that we relate and connect as human beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think like, in order to start having the conversation though, we have to it is weird for people and it's hard. Like just acknowledging that kind of with some empathy, that a lot of what happens when we start talking about it, and one of the main reasons people don't, is that it feels uncomfortable. Like actually just the sensation in the body of shame or embarrassment or past negative experiences comes up, and that kind of signals people like, uh-oh, I shouldn't do this. But it's actually just part of the process of starting to talk about it. And yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Well, and Kirk and I are both Gen Xers, and for most of us Gen Xers, at least in my experience, we didn't get the sit down and birds and bees talk. Usually, it was Playboys under dad's mattress, or you got in somebody's videos, and then you have even the younger generations now, even more so, where they don't have a healthy education around sex. It's all comes from pornography or something that isn't being presented in a healthy manner. So I think you have a lot of folks that are, especially younger generations now, that have almost a miseducation around sex, and so they don't have a healthy outlook or even a healthy awareness around sex.
Yeah, and I think you guys are both hitting on the two sides of the coin that we deal with. There's kind of there's a repression of sex and not talking about it, or there's this it's all over the place and in your face with advertising, and it's very confusing. And because it's a natural impulse and most people are curious about it, and most people are curious about it young, they start looking for information, right? And if you're not hearing anything from your parents and your culture is saying it's bad, but you're seeing images, you look for information where it is. And where is it? It's in porn. Like that's one of the avenues where you can actually see it, see what's learn about it. And then, later on you're like, wow, that isn't really realistic, but that's where the information was.
I've been fairly transparent just throughout, at least the last decade of my life anyway. And this topic and specifically where we are now in this whole concept, where we just landed, I discovered pornography when I was 9, and for 30 years I was addicted to it, and it cost me every relationship I had in that 30 years, including a couple of marriages. And so, to your point, I only say that to reemphasize or to echo the fact that, you know, where these conversations weren't had, and so I did have to go out and find those things. And when I found it, you know, it taught me that sex was about consumption, and it wasn't about giving. It was just about receiving. It wasn't about experiencing. It was just about consuming. And so I say that. I mean, I feel like I got a lot of unhealthy messages, through the course of my development, I guess you can say, before my brain was even formed at 25 around this topic. And again, along with that, we didn't talk about it as a culture. No one ever had that talk with me, to your point, Jason. And so I just personally, I learned my education was taught to me from what ended up being a very kind of destructive, I guess you can say, as opposed to constructive perspective through the course of my life.
Yeah. Sex ed, it's amazing to me, the state of it, even still. I think it's true that there are only 13 states in the United States that are actually required to offer medically accurate sexual education.
Wow.
So there can be sex ed, there doesn't have to be sex ed. There can be sex ed that isn't even accurate to human anatomy or what we know through research. So people will naturally seek it out. And again, it's in porn, and most men that I work with have at one point or another been deeply involved with porn. And one of the ways I start out with it is like, hey, like there's actually something to it, in the sense that the kind you've been watching can point to some of your core desires. That I like taking some of the shame out of it, that it's actually like, it's showing you something about yourself. It may not be accurate to like what women want or how to actually create erotic experiences in real life, but it's showing you something about what's important to you, where your turn-ons are, and gives a foundation for like, hey, how do you want to live an erotic life? How do you want to have sex with your partners? What are the skills you need to like really turn yourself on?
That's something I think, I mean, we're getting close to our first break, but I think something we might want to dig into on the second segment is that how can we start to kind of re-educate ourselves? 'Cause I know in my experience, I'm sure Kirk's as well, when you get your education through pornography, it's not necessarily, like you said, accurate or what women really like, or even what would be healthy in the long term. And so you kind of get this miseducation, and then you get to a point where hopefully you get to a point where you start to want to re-educate yourself and go, well, that's not reality. That's not really working. So how do we get re-educated? So I think since we're at that break time, when we come back, we're going to talk about how to re-educate ourselves from an education on the sexual side from pornography. So we're the Mad Men of Masculinity. That's Dr. Beth, and we'll be right back.
Hey, I'm gonna drop off of this and log back in. Something screwy with my app here.
You screwy. That's what's going on.
I'll be right back. You guys.
All right,
you guys continue. I'll be right back.
We'll talk amongst ourselves. Go ahead. So I called you Dr. Beth. I don't know if you're a doctor, but
I'm not a doctor.
well, you are now. We said it live on air, so we just put you out there over all the social media outlets, and now you're Dr. Beth.
Now I'm gonna have to go get a doctorate.
like Dr. Ruth. I think nowadays you can get a ministerial license online. You can probably get a doctor somewhere online too. Just you just want the DR in front of your name or something. Hey, are you back now? Can I get rid of that one?
Yeah,
there's two of you there for a moment.
You got two of them. Should I take the other one off?
Right. Yeah. Kick the other one off.
Okay. Oh, there goes. Okay, took away. All right. So we're going to talk about how to re-educate ourselves. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Boom. And we're back.
We're back. Yes,
Yeah,
we're back.
that's right.
Admin show.
I had to reboot my app here because I was getting error messages, which is a great lead into the re-education or the rebooting of who we are, applying a boot to who we are and who we know ourselves to be, how we've come to that being our sexual being. And yeah, I will say that also part of my strategy is in terms of the topic here, just talking about sex, is I'm hoping, Beth, that you'll come back in the future and we can talk about it's all a plot to get you back in the future, and hopefully we can talk about some deeper topics once we break the seal on just talking about sex, period.
Yeah, I mean, it's my favorite thing to talk about. So
that being said, so what is your heart's passion in terms of your work in this area?
I mean, I'm just going to go back to your lovely compliment earlier on,
Mhm.
Kurt, around like my vibe and sultriness. Like one of the things I went on my own journey, to uncover my own kind of turn-ons and desires, and which can be a very kind of different process than it is for, people conditioned as men. But I love sex. I love not just talking about it, but I love doing it. And I think when, the more you can claim that and own it, it brings so much pleasure to your life. And that's what I want for people. I want people to have a lot of pleasure. And in some ways it even goes beyond sex, because when you start diving into who you are as a sexual being, you really start to uncover just erotic energy, which is, I mean, I don't want to sound too woo-woo, but it's like life force energy. So like I often work with clients who end up like suddenly composing a bunch of music or putting their writings out into the world, or like creative projects get going, because it's really at its core, it's like what turns you on in life. And I want to be around a lot of people who are alive and feel good. So that's my big mission.
Well, I love, I mean, we'll kind of segue back because I love that, because I think the miseducation of sex that most people, especially nowadays, get from pornography kind of sends that energy in a wrong direction. And I'm sure that there's a way, or there's a need now for a re-education to get back to what is your sensuality, what is your sexuality, what are your kind of turn-ons and things, and then how does that, to your point, turn into your life flow, your life energy? Because I think for a lot of us, without the education, without being able to talk about it, growing up the way we did, getting a miseducation through pornography, our energy isn't flowing the way it should be. And so a lot of us feel stuck and stagnant. And then it comes out in these weird ways, which, maybe comes across creepy, or comes across weird, or comes across whatever, but you're not flowing in that way. So I would love for you to talk about how do you help clients maybe re-educate themselves or find a true healthy sensuality and sexuality versus what they've been given.
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the places I start actually is like, let's for a moment throw out the word healthy. And the reason I say that is that word can sometimes get really bound up with what's appropriate,
Right.
or
Morals.
what's socially sanctioned or culturally okay, which is like about, you have like 1 inch of allowance for how to be a sexual being in this culture. The erotic psyche, the psychology of eroticism, it's not necessarily healthy in the sense of like it likes a whole bunch of different things.
That's for sure.
That you might never, ever, ever want to do in real life.
Well, that might be a good point to even touch on too, because I know, growing up the way I did and having my education around sex with pornography, like any dopamine thing, you get to a point where you need something a little stronger, a little weirder, a little something like that. So maybe talk about like it's not really as weird as you think. It's more of a dopamine hit or what? Because I think a lot of folks, they don't want to talk about it because they're like, well, if I talk about what I watch or I talk about this or that, then everybody's going to try to lock me up or call me a freak or something.
Exactly. And that is actually the first step that I go through with clients. It's like, whatever is going on in there, like it's normal in the sense of like the erotic mind just works that way. And we all get imprinted. We actually, like, a lot of our erotic desires and our sexual desires come from experiences we had in childhood. Like needs that weren't met that we're trying to kind of resolve in our, like, a lot of it are storylines that we're like trying to get certain needs met, that we, emotional needs met, that we missed in childhood. And so it, to the adult mind, it seems kind of weird.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons porn is like super addictive or attractive, because it has all kinds of scenarios, right? It is like a picture of the erotic mind in certain ways. And so I like to just normalize the fact that your sexual mind is weird.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that. That helps.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
well, and then when you throw in traumas, when you throw in abuses, when you throw in a lot of negative experiences that a lot of people have had over the course of their life, especially at younger ages, then, to your point, you add in something to the recipe. It's like adding, yeast to flour kind of thing. All of a sudden it grows and it can expand into other things and morph into this and that. And to your point, several dots could be trying to connect that are, generally speaking, kind of unrelated. And then when you just throw in the availability and the proliferation of, the artificial nature, the artificial exploration of that, especially through today's, broadband internet, man, I mean, it just opens the door, any door. Like, there are doors there that you would never open, but you open those doors because it's what's behind that. Part of one of those dots is curiosity, right?
Yeah.
100%. And I think, like, when we slap the label healthy or unhealthy on things, it can actually prevent us from opening doors that actually are useful. We need to learn to navigate. Like, we open the door and then we need like certain tools with us to navigate through those kind of strange rabbit holes. But there's usually a lot of wisdom and self-knowledge that comes through that. And I really think, though, like this is like kind of the next level of what I work on with people. It's like the body is often what's missing, the actual physical experience. Because a lot of times when we learn through porn or these things, it's not that it's like unhealthy sexual scenarios necessarily. It's just that we don't know how to like bring the charge through our bodies. We don't know how to like feel the turn on and then figure out how we want to engage in that with like real people. So there's a lot of like slowing down, feeling turn on. You mentioned, Jason, like sometimes it's creepy, right? Every man who's ever come to me, every man I've ever talked to is terrified to be a creep.
Yeah.
And what, in my world, what all that a creep is like erotic charge that has shame on top of it.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel turned on, but I'm not allowed to express it. And now I'm in this battle with myself. And so the signal I'm sending out into the world is very confusing. Yeah. And people don't know what you want or what to do with it. And like a lot of men who are like trying to be nice guys, or trying to not ever harm a woman with their sexuality, that's what's happening. They're putting out confusing signals. And so women are like, ooh, I don't know what to do with that energy over there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that's even more and more prevalent nowadays, because you have this kind of proliferation of, the anti-masculine movement and the growth in the feminist movement and, trying to be equal. And, and there's just such a confusing thing of, well, what do you want? And I know in my case, I spent so much time isolated and kind of away from socializing to those things that my social anxiety, if I'm not like thinking about it and aware of it, usually a lot of times, I think my therapist used to call it social anxiety Tourette's. Like, I'll make jokes to try to break the energy or try to ease the tension, and then that comes off as creepy or something. And then, of course, one thing that we've learned over the years too, Kirk and I, is that a lot of times it depends on if the girl finds you cute or not. Like if you're attracted to her, then whatever you say is fine. If you're not attracted to her, then it's all creepy. So it's kind of like this never-ending kind of echo chamber of like, I can't win for losing. What am I supposed to do?
Totally. And if you're trying to be a certain way to get a certain response, it won't work. And that's again like where the body comes in. It's like one of the things I first help people do is just feel erotic energy in their own body and get more comfortable with that. Like, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, this is something that is really just kind of weighing heavy on me right now. And in the work that I've done with men and having been one for 52 years, which not every man can say they've been one in their whole life these days. Anyhow, there's another part of manhood or of masculinity. And I think most every guy recognizes that there's a lion, a primal part of who he is that can be very dangerous. And without guardrails, that lion can do some damage. That lion, if unleashed truly, can be a bad thing. Can lead us down some really dark places. Like the stuff we can sit around and think about at times. It's like there's no wonder we need to disconnect at times and watch football all day on Sunday, or train ourselves not to think at times. Because if it's like, left to our own devices, we could do a whole lot of damage, a whole lot of damage to ourselves and to the people around us, and even to society. So I wonder, I think from a male or masculine perspective, it's an exercise in self to be able to recognize the danger in who you are, even in your erotic self, to recognize that, to have the self-control, to put up guardrails, to not go that far with it, and to still accept yourself as that's just who I am. And you and I had this conversation actually, Beth, that, a lot of times our women want that. Our women want, desire almost to be the prey of the primal, in safety though, like in the confines of safety, in the sandbox kind of thing, like that can be an arousal or a turn on to our women. But I do think that, that guys know that left to our own devices, man, it's like a lion that'll just rip a gazelle, in half. And I mean, it just some stuff that, that we watch on YouTube, it is pretty horrific.
Speaking of keeping ourselves under control, we're going to control ourselves a little break here real quick, and then we'll come back and hear what Dr. Beth has to say about that. So we'll be right back. We're the Mad Men of Masculinity right here on KLDC.
This is why these conversations just go like super quick and all that kind of stuff. It's really hard to keep it. But I do. But because this is, the stream is still going, the live stream anyway. It's, man, that's a very real balance of who we are as men specifically, of just like, man, if I just went completely off the rails, man, I'd be sitting here, with a bucket of peanut butter, and just, just freaking out all day kind of thing, or something. And so, I think part of that balance of that journey for us men is learning how to be that and still be a good man.
Yeah, it might be something to even talk about in the next segment, is like, how do we find that balance? Because I know it's almost like even with parents and kids, like when the kid feels safe, then they feel safe to explore. But when they don't feel safe, they cling. And it's like when you're in a relationship with your partner, if they feel safe, then it's like almost like now you can be the, what's the word? Creepy, freaky, whatever. You can be that.
Totally. And I think this is how it actually ties back to like, why do we need to talk about it? So we can play harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's bring it back so we can play harder. Hang on one sec. And we're back. Welcome back to the show, y'all. Get your notepads out. We're getting deep.
Some of our best conversations are during the breaks here. So folks ought to
During the
go to
breaks, yeah.
YouTube. Hey, speaking of YouTube, you sent me that thing, man. We got like what 475,000 views or something we crossed
Yep.
on YouTube.
Yeah, we're
Man,
making our way to 500,000, y'all. You keep liking and
on the way to
subscribing and
500,000,
being part
man.
of the show.
When do they send us checks, or are you getting the checks and I don't know about it?
I ain't getting nothing. I think I need to talk to all of our VA people out there and all you in the YouTube world that know how to monetize. Talk to your boys. 'Cause I think I may have missed a button somewhere. We should be monetized by now.
I
We're
don't know,
not.
man. Sometimes I wonder if JBK is getting them checks and he ain't saying nothing to nobody, man.
I ain't getting no checks. But I'm about to ask
Talking
you to
about
borrow some
sex
money.
today, man, and Beth Mongold, thank you so much. I mean, this is again. I mean, we're already like past halfway through this thing, and we haven't even scratched the surface on so much stuff, man. So this is, I mean, man, we definitely gotta come back and have
Well,
a
and like you
regular.
were talking about, Kirk, like right before the break, every man has a lion within him, and he wants to let that out within his relationships with his sexual partner. Beth, how does he do that? How does he create an environment where that's okay?
Mm-hmm. Well, this comes back to like, we need to talk about it. And especially with the people we're having sex with. Like, I can't tell you how many people come to me and they're like, we don't know how to talk about it. And they've been having sex for years that they haven't been enjoying, and a lot of, to your point earlier, Kirk, a lot of women are like, I really wish he would just take me. Like I really wish the lion would come out. And so there need to be like actual conversations happening. Like, yes, you guys do have a lion in you. So do we. Like, sex is primal. It is not safe necessarily. It is not a safe activity. But if we can actually have open conversations around this is why I think actually like the kink and the BDSM world, whether you're into it or not, has a lot to teach us around how to have these conversations. Like, what are things that don't feel good to me? What are words I don't want to hear? What are words I do want to hear? What do I want you to do to me? What do I want to do to you? When you can start talking about these things and then actually build some skills and then even have ways of like having conversations when things don't go well. A lot of people don't bring things forth, whether it is sexual or emotional, because they're afraid of making a mistake. And when we're in these territories, these erotic, emotional territories, these primal places, you will make mistakes. You will cross lines. You might mess up. And to give your partner and yourself the leeway to do that, and to also be able to have repair conversations on what went well, what went wrong. So in some ways, like if we're talking about sex, it's like, we got to talk about it before we do it. We got to talk about when we're doing it, and we can talk about it afterwards. Like that stream of communication makes things doable. And
I think that's something, especially doing a masculine show, is really good to talk about, because most guys, we have this thought, or we think that we're supposed to be perfect at it. We think we're supposed to be able to go all night and know everything without any education. And I know for a lot of the nice guys, and even in my experience, like my first few sexual experiences weren't the most healthy or great, and then they developed within me this idea to be the best. I'm the best pleaser. But then through relationships and things, you get to a point where you're like, well, how do I receive? How do I allow that? And so being able to have those conversations, or even, I think what we really need to do is change the narrative around just being perfect at it or being good at it. It's being like, this is, it's like anything else. You got to work it out. You got to kind of talk about it, figure out what works. Like, you're not going to be perfect, but so many guys out there are scared to death because they think they have to be perfect.
Freud has this 3-part personality theory: the id, the ego, and the superego. Right. And the id is that primary, that primal part of who we are. That's just the lion that devours with no remorse kind of thing. And, and then you have the super ego, which is all the morals and beliefs and all those kinds of things. Then you have the ego in between that recognizes the needs of the id, but puts in balance the higher set of beliefs and foundations of the super ego. And so having a strong ego is good, being able to do that. And Beth, to your point, I think so many marriages fall short in the ability to talk about those things and to explore those things and to what does my what does my primal part of me, when I see you, I just want to do this or whatever. And that comes in the whole intimacy thing, because man, you got to be able to trust the other person to share those kind of things, and you got to be able to have those conversations. And it's like, yeah, I like that. That wasn't my favorite. I would never want to do that again, without bringing shame on the other person for wanting to go there, but being able to explore just the primal part of who we are. We can lose that the older we get, the longer we're in relationships, and all those other kind of things. Things generally just tend to vanilla out, and we miss that gift that we have, that the ability to explore that.
Yeah. Yeah, like here's a situation I see that's pretty common in long-term relationships because of how we're conditioned culturally, right? Like women often, and again, I'm using broad generalizations. This is not true of everyone, but it's patterns I see in people who come to me and people who do similar work to me. Women were conditioned to like not know what they want, right? Like to just kind of let things happen to them, and to not have a voice around what their desires. So a lot of women are like, I don't even know what I want. I don't even know what feels good. And a lot of men are like, you're supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to know what you want. You're supposed to be ready at all times. And you're supposed to also know what she wants and make every experience explosive and amazing. And so for years, sometimes couples will endure this pattern where she's kind of frozen because she doesn't actually know what she wants, but it's also not like what she's experiencing doesn't feel that great. He's like in his head panicked that she's not orgasming and like trying to make it happen and can't feel his body. And so everyone's kind of out of the body, like doing this thing they think they're supposed to do. And it starts with making out, and then it goes to, oral, and then this happens, and this is the thing we're all supposed to like. And when like one of the main things, again, like coming back to teaching people how to get back into their bodies, is to actually be in touch with that primal urge. What would feel good right now? It might be, I want to just lay on top of you and feel you and breathe. It might be, I want a foot rub. It might be, please spank me. Like the body will tell you. A lot of people are just functioning from this, like, oh, this is what I saw in porn, or, oh, this is what I saw in the movies, and, oh, this is how you're supposed to do it. But I have no idea what I'm actually feeling.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that since we don't talk about it, especially for guys, we don't really have the education or the awareness about it. I know in a lot of my past relationships, it started off hot and heavy because it's all brand new and everything's great, and I'm doing my best to please her. And then we get into a kind of more standard relationship, and then work and all the other stresses and the home stresses and those things come into play. And then I start getting like feeling bad and less than, because I'm stressed out, so that kills my libido. And then she's thinking that I'm doing something on the side because I don't ever want to do it. It's like, I'm tired, I was working all day, and then I come home to the stressful household, and so that kills it. And so being able to have those conversations and not take it personally, I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of times guys take it personally because they're not perfect or the biggest or the best or whatever. Then ladies take it personally. Well, he doesn't want me because he's not doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, how can we talk about those things and bring it out to light?
Yeah. I mean, one of the like foundations of having these conversations is like, we're on the same team. We want the same thing. We want to be connected. We want to give each other pleasure. We want to feel pleasure. And coming from that place, it's really easy to go, and most people get stuck in what's wrong with me or what's wrong with you. And whenever you're asking that question, you're in the wrong territory. When you're in the shame blame current, it's away from the erotic current.
Yeah, you're definitely not present when you're doing all that kind of stuff. And if you're not present, then it's really hard to connect. I mean, I don't know how you have connection without being present. And, again, without connection, you can't have intimacy. I mean, you just can't. And then it's an action. It is something that is external. And like I said, I most of my life experienced it as something that I consume, not as something that I participate in.
Yeah.
And then as I've gotten, on in the years, I've learned that, statistically speaking, a lot of, if not most, women have been violated or abused in some kind of way by somebody, and it would, probably a male at some point. And quite honestly, more and more these days, a lot of men have too. And so we have just all of these things that we bring into the moment. And, he may be sitting there thinking, am I doing it right? Am I hitting it right? And all this other kind of stuff, not knowing that, maybe she doesn't get aroused or orgasm the way you're doing, or just, the way we're conditioned that women are, and vice versa. And so we get so many of these mixed signals, and we have all this radio dialogue going on in our head. It's like static over the radio. And if you ever, especially been in the military, there's this concept of, stepping on communication. If one person keys the microphone and somebody else keys the microphone at the same time, both microphones are trying to take input, and nobody can hear anything that's on that frequency. And so, we have to, it's really an exercise in developing the art of communication between two people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're 100% right. Presence is one of the keys, and also vulnerability. Like oftentimes the static comes when we're trying to protect these parts of ourselves that like are afraid of being imperfect or have been hurt in the past, right? We like these parts come out that want to fight because we're trying to protect really tender parts in our own beings. And so it takes a lot of courage to be like, hey, I am afraid I am not giving you pleasure, and it makes me feel like I'm not doing a good job with you, and I really want to, like being able to drop into those more vulnerable feelings is really key.
Yeah, it's something I think, especially in this last segment, we'll definitely want to get into more, because I think a lot of folks want to talk about it. They don't know how. So we'll take our last break. We're the Mad Men of Masculinity, and we'll be right back. Yeah, I think people need help with like how do we even open the conversation? How do we not get, feel less than or personal, or I know, and I think maybe even something to bring up too is a lot of times, the guys get in that I gotta be Big John stud and perfect and all this stuff, but then a lot of ladies don't want to get vulnerable either, because they don't want to say that they don't know what they're doing, or don't want to ask questions, so then they project, oh, it's all the guy's fault, he doesn't want me, or whatever. So love to get into that conversation a little bit, just like the vulnerability of it. How do we be vulnerable and go, I don't know?
Yeah
There's at some point, Beth, if you want to throw in you mentioned the idea of asking a question. I know we're like bam, 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 but feel free to hit the break in the conversation and throw in some kind of question. Like, I mean, this is it's pretty obvious we got to come back and talk about some stuff.
Topics,
we need more time.
Yeah. Well, you guys have been doing a great job of sharing your own lives anyway. So
well, that's what we do. We can get the point now where it's like, well, you can't tell me nothing. I already told everybody.
Isn't that a great feeling to just be an open book to the world?
It's always nice when somebody tries to like come at you with something. You're like, what? I already talked about that.
Yeah.
It's freedom. That's what that is for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you're busy. Let's get this last segment done, and we'll get you on your way.
Hey, yes, we are back. That's right. Your boys back. Mad Men of Masculinity. Hey, before we even close, I'm not even going to wait till the very end, the last 3 seconds kind of thing. Beth, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how can folks get a hold of you? How can folks contact you?
Well, you can look at my website. It's eroticsenses.co, not com.co. eroticsenses.co, or you can email me, beth@eroticsenses.co.
Nah, and you're based in the Denver area, right?
I'm in the Denver area. Yep, and I also work online. So
awesome. What kind? Hey, you don't like work online. You're not saying you work.
I coach online.
Okay. Just clarifying. I just want to make sure.
I do not have an OnlyFans. I do not have an OnlyFans. Although, I mean, maybe
making sure. Just making sure.
So yeah, before we got all creeped out with that last question and before the last break, we were talking about how do we get vulnerable and have these conversations. Because I know most guys think they need to be perfect, and then a lot of times, even on the other side, a lot of ladies, they don't want to admit they're doing anything wrong, and they don't know what they're doing. They don't want to be vulnerable, so they project. So how do we open this up and have these uncomfortable, vulnerable conversations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, starting out with that idea of like, what do I actually want here? I want to be connected. And I think we have to ask that question of ourselves. Do I want to be connected or do I want to be right?
How's it go? You can be happy or you can be right. So
yeah. and recognizing that when we talk about this stuff, it's emotional. It's inherently emotional. And so like a lot of people, again, just like when we're kind of, trying to make sex right and we get in our heads, sometimes when we're trying to make the conversation go the way we want it to, we're in our heads and we kind of skip over the emotional part. So there are ways of just like, again, coming back to your body, breathing, acknowledging what's actually happening in you, and then sharing that openly as a way to connect. Now, sounds simple, sounds like a formula, but it's not easy. Like that's a lot of what I help people do. Because often we are like, we're trying to defend vulnerable parts inside of ourselves. And so we're either pushing away or we're collapsing. That's what people tend to do. We fight or we freeze or fawn. And so like actually starting to pull out the emotions and be seen by your partner is where it's at.
So since we have you here, because it sounds like this is, kind of one of those communication trainings I used to do where you come from, I feel, and this is how I feel versus you make me feel. And I think that tends to be the biggest issue. So many people go with that, you make me feel versus I feel, da-da-da.
Yeah. I statements are helpful. Sometimes, people are wily and they can end up, using even that to kind of attack, but it's a good place to start. Like, hey, this is hard for me to talk about. I'm feeling sad that we're not connecting, that we haven't had sex in a while. Like bringing in that I piece, how I'm actually feeling, and leading with the, one of the things I teach a lot is that underneath every complaint is actually a desire. I'll give you an example. When I first learned this, I was working with a coach at the time, and I was married at the time. And I was like, I can't believe it. He went downstairs, he made breakfast for himself, and he didn't make any for me. Like, I don't understand. Why wouldn't he also make me eggs? And I was so charged up about this thing. And my coach at the time was like, all right, slow down. Like, why do you want him to make you eggs? And he kind of led me through this process where I felt the desire underneath, which was like, what I was seeing in my mind was, I want to start the day with him. I want to sit across the table and feel him. I want to share emotional connection with him before I get my day going. And when I could share with him that feeling rather than like, why would you not make me eggs too? It's a simple example, but it happens all the time with couples, right? The desire underneath is for connection. And so when you find that in yourself, like what that genuine desire is, that's what you want to communicate through.
And it would probably be a surprise to a lot of women that men want connection too. That we are not these, lone beings that walk around like a zombie, not wanting. We want connection. Wait till Sunday and find out. I mean, man, how many of us are walking around with jerseys on with somebody else's name and number on, wearing another guy's name and number on our chest and our back, or we go to this place, we go play golf with, these same guys, we go to, to watch the game, we go hang out, we go do whatever it is. That men want that too. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't have it, but men want connection, and when we don't have it, we atrophy in that area, and a lot of us don't even know how to have connection, and so a lot of concepts that women might have as far as a perception of men are probably not accurate in terms of those types of things that he might want on his side too, and he's probably not verbalizing his list as well.
Right. Well, you think, I mean, again, when we look back at cultural conditioning, it's like guys were trained out of their feelings, like kind of before they could even walk. Like you guys were trained for the most part. And I think it's a little better in the younger generations in some instances, but the idea of masculinity is like, not only do you have your feelings under control, but you really don't have any, or you shouldn't show them. And so a lot of men never develop. So, and then it all goes into sex, right? Every kind of connection or like desire for intimacy is on sex. When you actually have as broad a desire, when I start working with a man, I often ask him like, well, what is sex for you? Like, what is it? And I like every single time they pause and they go, actually, it's really about the intimacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I picked up the intimacy incubator as a moniker. Because I mean that it is that for sure. I firmly believe, not only through my own personal experience, but experience in terms of with others as well, that a man is not truly ready for intimacy with a woman until he can have non-sexual intimacy with men. And experience what it's like to be open and to be safe around other men, because at that point, that practice, it's almost like, the Romans doing sword fighting and all that kind of stuff. That practices you, or that gives you practice for what the skill set that you need to have intimacy with a woman. Not that it's battle, but absolutely, there's so many things that a man wants, but he may not be ready for unless he can develop those in other areas.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And, I also want to just like tying it back to something earlier, like back to that primal, the lion, like I want to normalize actually that part of intimacy could be like, is that like the predator prey energy or those stronger aspects. I mean, it is incredibly intimate, right? To play in that animal nature. Sometimes we think of intimacy as just being like emotional love, and like, yes, and being ravaged is ravaging is an incredibly intimate experience when done well and in open communication.
Yeah, there's such a disconnect nowadays because so many men have been feminized and so many women have been masculinized, and nobody knows quite their role. And then nobody wants to take responsibility or be vulnerable and say, well, I don't really know. So you have a lot of guys, most guys nowadays, who are just craving some kind of intimacy and connection. But the only way they know how to have that is through some sort of physical act like sex. Then you have a lot of ladies who don't know how to express and don't know how to say, I don't feel safe, or I feel safe, or I'm not aware of this. And then they don't have these conversations so they can create that safe space where they can let the animal aspects out. And a lot of guys nowadays have lost touch with that because of the nice guy syndrome and the feminization. So it's like, I think we titled this episode perfectly. We're like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about sex, because I think that's the first step, is we need to talk about it. We need to have a safe space as men and women to come together and talk about it. So, because a lot of, like even Kirk said, most men nowadays don't realize how unsafe most women feel day to day. It's not our experience. And I think a lot of empathy and compassion comes through when they understand that. So having a safe space to talk about it, not having to be perfect, not having to be like know everything, but just talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. Like, I think for all of us to extend empathy and compassion for the experience of another that we couldn't really understand in its fullness, people say like women often feel unsafe physically and men often feel unsafe emotionally. And it's hard to understand when you haven't been conditioned in that way. So like extend,
No, I think that's a great point. I think I saw that the other day, and I think it's something we should probably focus on a little bit. It's just the fact that a man's purpose is to be fit, create physical safety for his partner, his woman, and a woman's purpose is to create emotional safety for her man. And I think thinking of that as like a purpose and a path is something we should probably focus on, because that leads ultimately to intimacy and sex.
I think that's a really helpful place to start. Sorry, Kurt, go ahead.
And when you can do that, you can be safe with one another. Safety, again, is misperception. Safety is huge for men. Most of the time, that's emotional safety. To your point, Jason, a lot of times for women, it's physical safety. But when you can do that and be safe with one another, then you can more easily explore those other kind of things. You can explore role play. You can explore, just conversation. You can have an alternate contact in each other's phone, like a whole nother persona over there. Like, when you get a text from that, that's the one you ain't showing nobody, kind of thing. But when you have those kind of things, and when you talk about those kinds of things and have that kind of environment, I think you're more apt to be able to be connected and more apt to be able to talk about stuff. And man, if you can be vulnerable and safe in the sexual aspect of your relationship, you could be vulnerable and safe in the financial aspect of your relationship, and in just the all the other dynamics that go on in a relationship. I mean, man, if you can have that in the sexual realm, then man, that just makes it easier to bleed over into all the others.
Yeah, and in my view, ultimately, we're all responsible for our own feelings of safety with who we are. Oftentimes we're just afraid of ourselves, right? Like going back to that, like scared of erotic charge, finding safety in terms of, I know I can feel what I feel and let it move through me and let it come to my awareness. We're responsible for our own safety, and we're responsible for our own arousal.
So in our 30-second wrap up here, Beth, I mean, what's your super quick going off the air here advice for folks when it comes to talking about sex?
Feel yourself first. Slow down. Take some breaths. Feel what's underneath the agitation, the anxiety, and remember that feel what you really want. That connection with your partner, that connection with yourself. I'd say like slow down is a great thing for most people.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I mean, thank you so much. We got to have you back on. One more time, how can people get a hold of you when they want to come and work with you?
Yeah, you can email me, beth@eroticsenses.co. Look up my website, eroticsenses.co. I really thank you guys for having me on. It's been really fun. I could talk about this for years. So anytime you want me back on, I'm ready.
We'll definitely have you back on. And all you watching, make sure you like and subscribe. Go check out Beth's website and send us some questions. Send us questions for her, and we can have her back on. But until next time, we're the Madmen of Masculinity. That's Beth, and we are out.